Today's webinar is going to be on a new FPDS NG field that was introduced in October 1st, 2017, so about a year ago. It's 7G additional reporting. So if you do, you can always go to the FPDS site, FPDS NG site, click on work site, and this will give you the latest definition of terms, data dictionary for FPDS NG. We'll look at version 1.5, which is the latest. That was introduced on October 1st, 2017. And they introduced two fields that are related to one another. One we went through a couple weeks ago. That is 6T, inherently governmental functions. This one is 7G, additional reporting, right here. And we can look at the definition. The data element allows the user to select the additional reporting requirements that apply to the contract action. Multiple values can be selected if more than one requirement applies to this action. So they got, currently they got two. E, employment eligibility verification. I'm not sure what that is. And the one the additional reporting we're going to be talking about today is S, service contract inventory FAR 4.17. So the question is, when should you designate an award as being subject to service contract inventory reporting? That's the question we're going to answer today. And let's see if I could find, interestingly, I just got an email myself today from the Department of Interior, who is one of the subscribers to the product on which this webinar is based, Data Check. And the CL is telling me we currently administer a contract. This is a contract for a product in accordance with FAR 4.17. Service contract reporting in SAM is a requirement. So he's saying that for our contract, we need to fulfill the obligations in FAR 4.17 as a contractor. Okay, agenda for today, we're going to go through a new data check. So we're going to show you a report that we use to flag transactions in FPDS NG that have incorrect data or that are logically inconsistent. In particular, in this case, field 7G does not indicate service contract inventory reporting is required, but based on everything else, FAR 0.1703 is saying that it is required. So out of sync. FPDS NG transaction is out of sync with the requirements of FAR 0.1703. Why are we doing this? From a big picture, logical standpoint, governmental purpose standpoint, why is this important? Service contract inventory reporting and special interest functions. So, what are special interest functions and how do they relate to SCI reporting? The flip side, are there not special interest functions? We're going to go through an ad hoc reporting exercise where you can analyze the service contract inventory reporting and inherently governmental function and also in comparison to inherently governmental function designation for your agency or department. And we're going to look at some examples. Okay, some definitions as we go through this. BAOB, that's just an acronym that's short for base and all options value, ties to FPDS NG data field 3A, base and all options value, total contract value. CL, closely associated function. We went through this 2 weeks ago if you were on that webinar. When you designate an award as performing closely associated functions, what you're signaling is that the contractor is performing support work that is in the ballpark of an inherently governmental function, but it does not cross the line. It should never cross the line. An example they talk about are criminal prosecution. If you charge someone, the individual, the people who are charging people with crimes needs to be a federal employee for obvious reasons. Impartiality, citizens know that they're being treated as fairly as possible. But a contractor could perform support in relation to that criminal prosecution, such as analyzing, the example I gave was real estate values to see if, and that contractor can make a recommendation as to whether it looks like that it was purposely undervalued or not. So the final call is with a federal employee, but in that case I gave the contractor would be doing closely associated work and that they're making analysis recommendations for the federal employee to review regarding the criminal prosecution. Raise your hand if you have any comments or you want to elaborate on what I just said. Okay, critical function, the CT, we went through this a couple weeks ago. I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's a contractor performing support for an agency in an area that is critical to that agency's mission and operation. Let's see what it says. It is the actual code. A function that is necessary to the agency being able to effectively perform and maintain control of its mission and operation. It may not be closely associated. It may not even be close to something only a federal employee should do. The example we looked at was providing telecommunications services to the Bureau of Prisons Command Center. That's critical, but given the nature of the work and the lack, theoretically, by conjecture, the lack of discretion to the contractor, they were following this very tight set of requirements. That would be a critical function, but not closely associated. Inherently governmental function, we just went through that. Only federal employees should be doing those. Service contract inventory, a tool for assisting an agency in better understanding how contracted services are being used to support mission and operations, whether the contractor skills are being utilized in an appropriate manner. So the service contract inventory is a way for agencies to review all of their contracting to make sure that these buckets are being appropriately filled, CL, CT, and IGF. We'll go through that in some more detail. I'll say one quick one now. If in the service contract inventory, you notice that you have a critical function that is exclusively being performed by contractors. There are no federal employees in the mix supplying that function. And if you have low-level, low-skilled contracting people, relatively inexperienced people overseeing those contracts, then that would be something the service contract inventory report might flag and say, hey, the agency should look at that more closely. Get more, either get some federal employees involved or get more senior people overlooking it so that if that contractor defaults or those contractors default, the agency doesn't lose control of its mission, is unable to carry out its mission. Special interest function, those are functions that require increased management and attention due to heightened risk of workforce imbalance. We'll look at some examples on that. Type of contract pricing. This ties to FPDS NG, data field 6A, type of contract. We, at Data Check team, we like to use the one type of contract pricing. And we're talking about firm fixed price, cost plus fixed fee. That's what we're talking about when we use that term. Some people call it type of contract, but to us that gets confusing as to whether it's a delivery order, purchase order, GWAC. So when we talk about firm fixed price, time and materials, labor hours, the term we like to use is type of contract pricing. That's also in the FPDS NG data dictionary in terms of the term they use in as well. Okay, Let's look at Fed Data Check 143. So who do we have on the line who is not from OPM or Veterans Affairs? And I think we got someone from Justice. Let's see here. We got someone from, looks like we got agriculture. So I'm going to do agriculture. And let's see what this is all about. Mary, I see energy. Okay, thanks, Mary. Let me check. And if you have a question or comment, please fire away while we're going through this. So what we're going to do here, this Data Check 143 is going to flag awards that are in an inconsistent state with the FAR. In particular, FAR 4.1703. Okay. This isn't important. This is our data check product, but you can actually set this up in an ad hoc report, as I think that would be really simple to use. And we're going to go through ad hoc reporting towards the end of this webinar. Okay, I'm going to come down here now to check 143. Invalid additional reporting designation. Service contract reporting is required, but it was not reported. You click on that, and we're going to see if we can look at some actual examples for agriculture. Let's see if they have any in FY19. If they don't, we're going to have to go back up the date. Now they do. Firm fixed price. Let's see if I got it. All right, so this should be different here. Cost plus fixed fee. Let's see how much is on that. Yeah, good. All right, so you notice that this one here, let's take a look at it. I'm going to drill out the Forest Service. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I saw some of the Forest Service email. So now I'm going to hit View. Okay, so we're above the SAP. It's above 250. That's a key point. I'm going to come down to the type of contract pricing, we call it, type of contract. Cost plus fixed fee. Above the SAT, cost plus fixed fee. And if I look at the additional reporting field, that new one in FY17, it said none of the above. They did not select service contract inventory reporting. Now let's see what the FAR says about that. Okay, FAR, incidentally, it looks like acquisition.gov has a new interface. I just noticed that today. New look and, new look and feel to it. So I'm going to put down FAR 1.703, and I'm going to look at, actually, let's back up, just make sure we're in the right section. Service contract inventory, scope of subpart. Service contract inventory. It doesn't say reporting in here, but let's see what 4.1703 says. We were above the SAT, cost plus fixed fee, and I assume it was a service as well, although we actually didn't check that. Yep, it's a service. Natural resource. It begins with a letter, right? PSC code begins with a letter. Except as exempted, we're going to talk about that. There are no known exemptions. So every award is subject to these reporting requirements. Reporting is required according to the following thresholds. All cost reimbursement, which this one was cost plus fixed fee, right? If I'm jumping around, if you can't, yeah, cost plus fixed fee. So it's a cost reimbursement. It was above the SAT. It was 260,000 based on all options value, estimated total value. So there you go. So 4107, 4.1703, A2 required that A2I required that be set the service contract inventory FAR for month 7. Now maybe this employment eligibility needed to be selected as well. That's out of the scope of this webinar. I'm not familiar with that one, but I know that this should have been selected. Let's look at one other one. So that was, let's look at firm fixed price. Now here's an interesting one. This one is firm fixed price. So there's the based on all options value. There's the obligated amount. Let's go take a look at this one. $500,000, over $500,000 BAOB, lower on the obligated amount, so it doesn't even exceed the SAT on the obligated amount. Okay, firm fixed price, so it's not time and materials, it's not labor hours, and it's not cost reimbursement. Firm fixed price. It is for a service, and again, I've got none of the above here. Housekeeping janitorial. Let's look at what FAR 1703 says there. All cost reimbursement, time and materials, labor hours, and orders with an estimated total value above the SAT. Okay, that's not applicable to our case because this was down here. All fixed price service contracts, orders issued according to the following thresholds. And this is the key here. Awarded or issued in FY 2016 and subsequent years with an estimated total value / based on all options value of $500,000 or greater. So that was a mistake there. Now if this one had been, instead of 554, it had been 494, 494,000, then it would not have been in violation of FAR 41703. So pretty straightforward, right? I mean, these are your thresholds, and if they exceed that threshold based on the type of contract pricing and the based on all options value, you've got to check that field in that the new 7G additional reporting field. It at least has to include service contract inventory, parentheses FAR 4.17. Any questions so far? One other thing in terms of, if you haven't heard about what Fed Data Check is, you can hear it at the end. It's the same, just about the same every week. Most of these new checks, or at least about half, if not a little more than half, we don't come up with them. This was somebody at Treasury had noticed that they had been miscoding some of their awards on the 7G field, and they asked us to come up with a report. So a lot of them, I'd say a little over half of the checks come from people like yourself who are in an acquisition and oversight role and say, hey, instead of me going through and looking at these things one by one or doing ad hoc reporting at FPDS NG, let's have an automated means by which to flag them. That's what we'll do. Okay. So we went through that. What about order dependent? You know, the one thing we didn't go through was order dependent. Obviously go with whatever the price it is for the given award. So if the IDD is as an order dependent type of contract pricing, then when the orders are being issued, you go with you apply the threshold based on the type of contract pricing for the individual order. One of the things that said in that FAR 1703 was except as exempted by OP guidance. So are there awards like utilities? Do we really have to do service contract inventory reporting on utilities? We have to analyze utilities as to whether we're over-reliant on them in terms of critical functions, or whether there's some utility contractor who's doing work that only a federal government, it seems to me like that's a little over the top on that. Why not exempt awards for utilities? But I have not had any, I've asked, and there's been no federal acquisition oversight official who has told me any exemption by OPP. All service awards are subject to this reporting. So what you do as a CO official, you insert either clause, one of two clauses, depending on the contract. So contract clauses 41705. Once you figured out it's subject to service contract inventory reporting, you insert clause 52204-14. For everything except an IBC, and you insert 52204-15 for indefinite quality contract. Okay, and and that means that you get an email. The contractor's going to get an email like I got. We're required to go into SAM, and we'll look at what we report a little later. Okay, why are we doing this? What's the big picture here? So if you look at this guidance here on 1110, I've pulled out some of the quotes. Service contracting inventory analysis shall include a review of the contracts. This is from OFPP guidance on service contract inventory reporting, which I'll distribute to you later today, along with the PowerPoint deck. Each contract, actually, let me pull that up. I have that up there. Appendix D. There we go. Pull this over. Here we go. So what's the big picture? And this is from, this gives you the government rationale as to why we're going through all this effort from Daniel Gordon, OFPP, explaining why this service contract inventory reporting is being implemented. Each contract in the inventory that is a personal service contract has been entered into and being performed in accordance with applicable laws and regulations. That would be one sentence in there, a personal services contract. Special management attention is given as set forth in this FAR to functions that are closely associated with inherently governmental functions. You hit us 2 weeks ago. You would understand the importance of that already. The agency is not using contractor employees to perform inherently governmental functions. The agencies have specific safeguards and monitoring systems in place to ensure that work performed by contractors has not changed or expanded during performance to become an IGF. And this is a key one. The agency is not using contractor employees to perform critical functions in such a way that could affect the ability of the agency to maintain control of its mission and operations. There are sufficient internal agency resources to manage and oversee contracts effectively. Experienced CO personnel. So you can see that IGF, inherently governmental functions, and service contract inventory reporting are joined at the hip. With the whole purpose, and if you read through the guidance and the Federal Registry and some of the commenting, is that the example I gave, or we talked about 2 weeks ago, was, if you did your service contract inventory analysis and you're with the Federal Aviation Administration, and you have a ton of contracts for animal control, and you go through the reporting on that, and you notice that there's an imbalance. There's virtually no federal employees doing animal control, and there's quite a few, a large number of contractors doing animal control. And after interviewing the CEOs involved in the higher value contracts, you notice that I'm making, I'm theorizing here. You know, they're lower level experience, lower warrant levels. My mind's a little bit off now, as I can remember. It's the chain that as you go up the ranks as a CO, but you know, you're a level 1 with no warrant. How about that? No certifications for managing these contracts. Well, then, if you're the FAA, the service contract inventory is then giving you a great service. You know that you have a critical function where the workforce is out of balance, and you have not effectively counterbalanced that with experienced contracting officers. You got your airport and, up in New York. You got lots of geese and other things around. The contractor defaults due to incompetence or mismanagement. Now you've lost control of your mission. You're not able to safely ensure that planes can land and fly in a hypothetical scenario. All because why? You know, that analysis and that conclusion before a catastrophe hit was supported by effectively tagging awards as requiring service contract inventory reporting. You got your other field you can combine with that new field 16, inherent governmental function. You did a qualitative review with the COs and CSs on your high dollar value awards for that PSC code, and then maybe you come to that conclusion. I'm doing a lot of talking here. If other people have comments or they've done through the SCI themselves, let me know. Again, part 2, why are we doing this? When you tag awards, like we did last week, let's start now with 7G additional reporting. Hey, that's SCI. That means the contractor needs to tell us how many people are working on that. And we need to assess workforce balance on that. 16, all right, that's a critical function. Not only is it SCI reporting, but the contractor's doing a critical function or a closely associated function. You know, this is going to enable people to throw warning flags or yellow flags or violations. Hey, encroachment. That the federal contractor doing animal control, they're making hiring decisions as to which federal employee gets on the team. To give a ridiculous example, that's encroachment. Contractor cannot be making personnel decisions on federal employees. We went through the over-reliance, yellow flag. Signal flare, just service contract inventory reporting, you know, that's what this 7G is all about. So important, you know, maybe right now some of these things are not, might be a little bit of a check the box in terms of some of the ones I've read, but I think everyone would agree that the concept behind this is well reasoned, well needed. All right, what is a special interest function? Let's look at that. Another thing on the guidance, a special interest function. That would be here. Shoot. Close it. Another guidance on service contract inventory. Let's see if this has a special interest. Yep. There we go. This is what so these were the original list of special interest functions, and agencies can customize them for their own tailor them to their own needs. But some of these are obvious as to why when you go through the service contract inventory reporting analysis, maybe you pull a few of the high dollar contracts out for qualitative assessment, interviews of the COs, the contractors, and so on. That's, for example, the SEC does. I know for one. Management services, contract and procurement support, R707. That's a, quote, special interest function. Let's look at the definition of that. Special interest functions are functions that require increased management attention due to heightened risk of workforce imbalance. Accordingly, agency review shall give priority consideration to the agency's use of contracted professional management services, information technology support services. It's all based, these special interest functions they're special because they have an increased risk of the agency losing control of its mission and operation. Special interest functions, therefore, are related to awards designated as CT, critical functions, and not the critical, mostly associated functions. I put a question mark there. It seems like when you read through the guidance, that's really the focus of these special interest functions is the workforce imbalance where the government is over-reliant on contractors to perform critical functions. Let's go back and look at this suggested list that OMB started out with 8 years ago. So you got what S112, I think, is water utilities, one of the utilities. So imagine you got a bunch of contracts for S112 for supplying water to your buildings and your agency, tap water, bathroom, so on. So you got that on one hand. On the other hand, you got a ton of contracts out there where you've hired contractors to be contract specialists and to do your, to write all, again, exaggerating, to write all of your statements of work for review, to do all your market research. I mean, you just, it's a way lopsided balance in terms of the number of people doing that type of acquisition work versus federal employees doing that acquisition work. Well, which one, in which PSC code are you more apt to lose control of your ability to manage your own destiny? Well, obviously it's this PSC, contracts in this PSC code, R707. If I'm the senior procurement executive, I want to make sure I have enough federal employees in here where I'm not getting undue influence from the outside as to what products and services my agency needs. And I can control my own oversight of contracts. If I lose control of who's supplying the water, well, I might not be able to do anything about that anyway. So another example of that would be program management support services. If you have the over-reliance, too many people doing, contractors doing program management support, managing your IT infrastructure, seeing what you need in your IT portfolio, you name it. Well, that's an area where, you're going to want to keep a good mix, I would say, logically, of federal employees and contractors and make sure that their oversight and the contract oversight is at a high level through federal COs so that you don't lose control of this. And when the key on the critical functions, the key test, a lot of those definitions kind of spins around your head, closely associated, critical. Imagine the key thing that the service contract inventory is trying to prevent is if a contractor messes up and defaults, you have to terminate that, either financial impropriety or lack of business ethics or what have you. If they default, does your mission stop? That's what you can prevent through having a balanced workforce and expert contract oversight. Okay, let's keep going. OMB guidance on special interest functions. It's a starting point. The top 10 PSC codes with the highest obligated amount is required. When you're going through your service contract inventory, you're going to want to look at your not only special interest functions, but also the PSC codes with the highest spend. And I'll send out this letter here based on this letter, OPP letter. If you're the Department of Education, you're going to want to look at your PSC codes and awards related to student debt collection service. If you're the EPA, what do you care about that? If you're the EPA, you're going to want to look at contracts, spend, how much your balance of the workforce on removal of hazardous materials. So those special interest functions we just looked at, those PSC codes, and your top highest ones with high spend, that's the starting point. And then you really should, as you go through determining your service contract inventory and whether you're in danger on contractors doing federal employee work over alliance. Pick the ones that make sense for your department or agency. Okay, remember that Form 1703A1, it starts out with, except as exempted by OAPP guidance. Service contract reporting shall be required for contracts and first-year subcontracts. An example that I had was, what about this award here? Is this exempted? Let's take a look at this in FPDS NG. Check my time. Uppercase PID : put in the PID. Okay, so this meets any of the dollar threshold. 500,000 is the, if you're above 500,000, no matter what the type of contract pricing is, you've met the reporting threshold. Who is the vendor? The vendor is a government, state and local government. So deal with another government entity. It is a PSC code. It is a service PSC code. So, but is this one you're getting water? The Department of Interior is getting water from this state or local government. Why isn't that exempted? I don't think it would be, but it's not. Everything is covered. And the other point is, while other PSC codes and their associated activities, may be the exclusive domain of contractors, such as Y1AA construction of office buildings, nonetheless, over-reliance is avoidable through additional resources to contract management. Reference on that. So if you see this one here, really utilities was the only one that when I went through it, that I thought should be exempted. Everything else I could see should be covered when the agency is reviewing the service contract. Even though the workforce balance is going to be 100% contractors to 0% federal employees. So here's one for way up there in the dollar values, $400 million, State Department. You're either building an embassy or an office building, but it says construction of office buildings. So why wouldn't that be exempted, since you're never going to have any balance that I can see between contractors and federal employees if the nature of the work is building office buildings. But there they talk about, again, you can go on that link, but they talk about you can reduce the threat of contractor default by heightening the experience level and the oversight of federal contracting officials. So here's the, getting back to a hypothetical again. I was talking about animal control, Federal Aviation Administration. Let's say that's another scenario, 100 to 0, 100% to 0%. Contractors doing the animal control, keeping large animals and the flocks away from the runways. If you had a whole series of experienced contracting officials overseeing that contract, and if the contractor did default, the idea is those personnel, those contracting officials would have enough experience and market research experience, savvy, and so on to be able to quickly put in place a non-competitive contract. So if they defaulted, I know just who to go to for 6 months, and I know what we should pay them. So we'll get that in place on an immediate non-competitive basis for 6 months, then we'll start up the competition for the 5-year replacement. Less experienced contracting official could be in trouble in that. So that's why, on these certain PSC codes, they still were subject to it for that reason. Again, there are no known OFP exceptions. All awards meeting the criteria in 4.1703, and they're not funded by DOD. They're funded by DOD, by the way. Service contract inventory reporting is not applicable. So I know the Department of Interior, I know it has awards that they contract and are funded by DOD. So those are out. So if you meet those thresholds, not funded by DOD, you got to stamp that service contract inventory reporting requirement and put one of those two clauses in the contract. All right. What do I have here? This was the ad hoc reporting. So I did go through. I'm going to come back to that. We'll save that ad hoc report at the end. Here are some examples I gave you of agencies doing their service contract inventory reporting. I thought the SEC did the most interesting one. If I click on that, here's a central link where you can look at service contract inventory reports from across the government. Actually, I do. Let's see. I think this is going to be a long one to download. This is the one that shows you from left to right what the federal government reported in FPDS NG and then what the contractors reported. Any questions or comments so far? Thanks. Here's what's been reported so far in FY19. We've got 2,096 service contract inventory award transactions that have been reported as subject to SCI reporting. Let's restrict that to non-zero, so we'll just do new awards. We do have none of the above here. Now let's, again, this is not related to products. This is related to service contracts. So let's filter it for service contracts. So these, theoretically, these are all below the threshold. Probably not, not probably, a lot of them aren't. Here's some that have been reported to both employment eligibility and SCI. Let's look at Department of Energy. Look at that. Let's see what's going on there. Okay, so we got 28 with none of the above. 4, that's interesting. 4 haven't labeled at all. You'd think you'd have to pick one of these two. I'm not sure how you. Oh, unless it was funded by DOD, then it would be blank. So not many designated as service contract, requiring service contract inventory reporting, that clause in certain contract. If we look here, and that would be one that, unless it was funded by DOD, you know, it should have been reported. That's actually obligated. Base it on options value. Base it on options amount. Get rid of this because this is a key number. So that one. So again, a lot of them are. That's another. Looks like another missed one. We should go out and take a look at it. In short, it's slow to pick up steam here, this designating of these. Field 7G is requiring service contract inventory reporting. Again, it goes by total contract value. Maybe that was the misunderstanding, the obligated amount. But that's the trigger is BAOB, obligated amount. It was not funded by DOD. So labor hours. So that one should have been service contract inventory. Why? You want to make sure that when you're doing audits that you got enough federal employees doing it, or you got enough oversight so that if they default, you get a new contract in place quickly. That's my approach. And what I think is a fair representation if you read through those OFPP letters. Let's see if I can get down a little bit. I wanted to show you this this link here because it's. Let's see this. Yep, this is. I think that is not it. Oh, God. All right, let me move on here. I'll have to come back to that. And we will look at the SEC's service contract. This was for 2016 and 2007. That's for 2000. It was done in 2017 for FY 2015. And one of the things they did here was, so here's their special interest functions. These are the ones they focused in on. These were the and one of the things that they did here was the methodology here. I didn't see this as much in the other reports, but the team reviewed the statement of work for each of the 48 contracts within the PSEs to determine if inherently governmental functions were being performed. Second, the analysis team sent out surveys and set up interviews with contracting officer representatives for all contracts selected for this review. So you can see that it's not just a quantitative review. Hey, we're spending this much money on this, on our 707 acquisition support. They're looking at statements of work, interviewing SEAL cores, You know, so that's for among other things to determine if IGS are being performed. So that's really, I would say, SEC in this case should be held up as an example of how to combine the SCI reporting from the contractors, the tagging of the awards with the actual qualitative analysis. I am going to look at that one last report. Sorry, I have it. Let's see if I. Okay. It's an Excel spreadsheet. And let's see what we got here. Okay. So this is on the acquisition.gov. It did bring me up to the site. Now, if I click on this, now this is what's going to get into the Excel spreadsheet. You see that? It's downloading here. It's 119 megabytes. So it's a pretty big one. 2 minutes left. So I'm going to come back to that. But when I open it up, you're going to see how the federal government has rolled up all this reporting and combined that with what the contractors have reported as required through those clauses in the contract. Okay. Let me do an in review here, and then I'll come back for these other things. New in FY18, there are two fields, 7G additional reporting, 6T inherently governmental functions, and they work together to support service contract inventory reporting and analysis. So if you did designate an award in 6T as being close critical function, CT, you tag it in 7G as requiring additional reporting. And you know, you got a contract that, you know, if you're going to do qualitative analysis, could be a good candidate. The goal is to prevent encroachment into inherently governmental functions by contractors who are performing closely associated functions. What's an example? You can draw up a draft statement of work of the contractor, but you can't approve and post the final statement of work and put it out and fit those ops. That would be encroachment. Prevent over-reliance on contractors who are performing CT, critical functions. That's the whole purpose of these two fields, the analysis that they support. Coding the field 7G, additional reporting, which is the point of this webinar, it's automatic, formulaic. You just look at 4.1703 and apply the type of contract pricing, and based on all options value of the award, you know how you should, whether you need to include, designate that award as compliant service contracting inventory reporting or not. The one caveat is if it's funded by DOD, you can ignore it. DOD's got their own method on service contract analysis. And then you include these clauses if you meet those thresholds. Let's see. Yep, this one opened up. Let's see if I can open this up. This synthesis of all the service contract inventory reporting on acquisition.gov. It's a big file, so trying to open that. I might come back to that again. I'm close to running out of time. One thing I did do, and I will supply, is a method of performing your own ad hoc analysis in FPDS NG. I will stay and do that. I have a document that walks you through it. which is right here. Comments or questions so far? Okay, so what this does is it goes through how to use the FPDS NG ad hoc report writer, designate awards as applying service contract inventory reporting field 7G, and also designated as critical functions in field 17. So it's a way for you to pull out awards that if you were in charge of the service contract inventory reporting analysis, or if you just wanted to look at possible imbalance in your own area, using the FPDS NG ad hoc report writer to pull out these awards. Let's see, here we go. Okay. So FY17 government-wide service contract inventory report generated. Well, let's see what this says here. This is that's what the money if you log into this review. This ad hoc report steps you can really go through yourself, but while we're waiting for that huge Excel file open up, why don't we, if it ever does. Let's see if we can walk through this ad hoc report. So imagine that you are senior procurement executive. Maybe you want to make sure that your contractors are not getting work that a federal employee should, or you're not over relying on the contractor. So here's how you go about it. I mean, like you saw, let me not go too fast. I'm simply logged into FPDS NG. I'm going to click on ad hoc reports. I'm going to click on new. Webinar demo. Okay, box 1, 2, 3 is what you're going to be picking. So I'm going to click on metrics. These are number of records based on option value. I'm going to pick BAOB. That's what triggers everything. Let's click obligation as well. And number of records. That's the number of, if you look at FPDS NG, that's a screen, that's a record transaction. You never want to deal with these actions. It's very rare if you ever want to, unless you're Veterans Affairs or Department of Defense. Otherwise, just stay away from this. Okay, so I got my numbers I'm looking at. Now I want to break those numbers out by textual attributes. So it's based on options value by department, by product service scope. Okay, so what I'm going to pick here is I'm going to pick department ID and name, agency ID and name, contract identification information. This is the PID, mod number, things along those lines. So I'm going to pick contract identification. I'm going to pick PID, rep ID, PID, and mod number. If you remember, when we were looking at that additional reporting designation, just look at one of them. It was in the legislative mandate section. I'll show you what that. What do I mean by that? So here's my record. This is a record. It's not an action. When you think of it, at least in terms of FPDS NG speak, they refer to this as a record, not an action. It's two different metrics. Actions is just going to get you confused. In my opinion, here's actions, by the way, down here. It doesn't have to be one. Sometimes people put a wrong value in there. So, additional reporting is in this section, legislative mandates. So now I know if I want additional reporting field in my ad hoc report, I'm going to click on legislative mandates. And here's my additional reporting. Contract information. If I look at here, this has my inherently governmental field. Let's see in here, this could be because it's there it is, contract data. So I'm going to come down here to contract information, and the code is messed up in IGF, so you really just want the description. You're having issues. It's another story, you know. So this will give me critical functions rather than CT. That would give me CT. This will give me critical functions. What I'm saying is based on my analysis of use of it, just the code doesn't work. Because what they did was they tried to jam in the code from what was used to be coded in the description field. It hasn't been working well. I also want the product or service information to make sure that I'm picking up a service. Okay, I think we got that down pretty well. Step 3, we're going to filter that. Filter that for mod number. Make sure that is equal to mod 0. I'll filter that one use. And I want to show the additional reported code. Only show value is equal to, and here I can hit select attribute values. And I can pick E, S. I'll just pick this. That's just wrong. Show only. I'd rather go with the description. Now let's see if I can select attribute values. And I can pick this one, and I can hold down the control key and do that. And let's go after a special interest function. Product or service code only show value is equal to R408. I'm going to save it. So I got my numbers, I got a bunch of attributes, contracting department, PID, what's the additional reporting, is there a part of service contract inventory, is the contract performing an IGF? Not IGF, are they reporting, they never should perform IGF, are they doing critical, closely associated with, save. And execute. Let's go with, we'll start with FY18. Go to FY19. Deploy. So the point here is that we pulled out ones that your area might want to take a particular look at if you came up on this list. If you're doing that, what the SEC did was send out teams of people to look at statements of work, interviewing in the core, do a qualitative assessment as to your workforce balance and whether any contractors are stepping over the line in terms of the functions they're doing, encroaching on an IGF. I think we had an energy, some of an energy here. So we got an energy one. I don't see any. Yeah, here's a NASA one. We'll look at what else we got? I know we got OPM. Well, just for discussion purposes, instead of this one. See if it's one that would be of interest to a service contract inventory analysis. It's an IDC. It does have a high dollar value. It's for a service. It does require service contract inventory reporting. And I don't think we filtered it for the inherently governmental functions. It's an other function. So one thing we could do is come back here, add a filter on that. IGF description. Let's only show values equal to critical. So we got it. And I'm running a little bit over, but we'll wrap up here in just 2 minutes. All right. So we've done the same thing, but we've now looked at awards that both require SCI and were designated as critical. If I see one here with a high dollar value, say this one, this should be one that would be of particular interest. Do someone doing an SCI analysis. Okay. Definitive contract, high dollar value. It's for service, required service contract inventory reporting, inherently governmental. I thought I put CT. I'm not sure why unless I picked the wrong one. The ad hoc report will give you better results than when I just went through it. So it would enable you to look for SCI in combination with critical functions here. Okay, and then the last thing we'll look at is this. So this is that government-wide service contract inventory report that's on acquisition.gov. And you can see it has a lot of the same fields that we just picked in our ad hoc report. The PSC code, the contracting department. We didn't have funding. But these are all fields out of FPDS NG. And then here is what gets picked up through the service, through the putting that clause in the award, and the contractor's report on the number of full-time equivalents and the first-tier subcontractors. So this would enable an additional analysis because of that reporting requirement. You can look at, get a little more, drill down into an analysis of your workforce balance. That was a lot. Again, I'll send you off that. I'm not sure I didn't have quite the success I wanted on that ad hoc report, but I will send out the instructions on that. I will go through who I am now. You're willing, ready to drop off if you want. If you want to stay, I'll go through this and we'll take a look at that ad hoc report one more time if you want. I'm with Potomac Wave. You can go to YouTube and look at go to YouTube, type in Fed Data Check. That's the best place to find out more about us. I will send out a training certificate. Most people give me just one CLP point for attending these webinars. Not up to us. For some agencies, they said they will do it. For others, if you submit it, they pass. And most people get it approved. Now, we're mostly a women-owned small business. Some makes goes will be thrown out of the small business designation on a lot of different vehicles. Fed Data Check, we subscribe to by 11 agencies, Agriculture, HUD, Agricultural Research Services, the agency, SEC, some of these are Department subscriptions, some are at the agency level. We do more than FPDS NG data quality, for example. We also do analyze your competitive one-bid rate, increase your competition rate, do analysis, metrics, reporting, tracking, monthly progress reports, monitor high-risk vendors. So if you have a vendor, for example, who has delinquent federal debt and you pay them with a credit card, we'll flag that and look for it. That enables, so in other words, we combine FPDS NG data with SAM data. And that's it. Look at that. Look at that ad hoc report one more time. I understand why we didn't. Maybe I didn't hit add. So I'm going back in. And I'm going to go to ad hoc reports. I click on that personal service. Now, if I hit last edited, that's going to give me the one I just did. I look at my filters. Yeah, what I didn't do is I didn't hit add. So if I do inherently governmental functions, show only, and I pick these two, so only pull out critical. And this is what I didn't do. You can't just run it. You got to hit this add. And now I save it. Now it's going to pull out awards that have the SCI reporting designation and are designated critical. All right, who we got here? The DOE's, DOE, Education, DOJ. We got let's see. Veterans Affairs. Not seeing anybody on this list. Let's back it up one. Edit, execute. We'll go back to this. So I'm looking for SCI reporting. Yeah, it could be they didn't market SCI when they should have. I hit Excel, either Excel or CSV. Sometimes they'll cut you off there too if your report is too big. Up here. Okay, there you go. I still don't see anything along the line. Well, I think we have one person from Justice here, so let's look at this one. So by setting up this app, by pulling in the PSC code, the department, the baseline option value, filtering it by the new fields 7G and 16, you can come up with this one, which is the high dollar value. That's the item. There you go. That should do it. Let's see what we got here. Not a very high dollar value, but they did come up with a critical function. Service contract inventory report required. R408, so that's a special interest function. Yeah, so that could be one. Justice wanted to look at it. Pretty low dollar value, but if there was a high dollar in particular, it would be one of the SCI and SCI. That's it. I went over, but hopefully that was helpful. I'll send out the everything we looked at today, the PowerPoint deck, the OPP letters, the ad hoc report instructions. And any questions? If not, that'll be it. I'll hang on the line if anyone. All right, everybody. Thanks very much. And it will be 3 weeks before the next webinar, by the way. Next week is Thanksgiving, so just a week there. See ya. Thanks.